Hi guys, I'm Sahar and I'm an assistant psychologist.
Hi, Zahra. Nice to meet you. Hi, everybody. I'm Anise Marie, and I'm a singer-songwriter.
Hey everybody, I am Jessica and I'm a junior doctor.
Hi guys, I'm Zainab and I'm an underwriter for a car leasing company.
Hi guys, I'm Gigi and I'm a producer.
All right guys, so the first question is, when did you first notice you had a mental health issue?
I think for me it was 2020, so like all throughout my life I've always suffered with like my moods going up and down, but I would always blame it on something. I would blame it on like my periods, or I would blame it on something going on in my life. But then I realised in 2020, like, nah, this isn't normal. Yeah.
Mine was when I was 19, I'm 26 now. I just felt different one day, so I just woke up and just kind of like, just didn't want to be in the world. Like, it sounds crazy, but yeah, just everything changed from then.
I think mine was at the back of like 2019 going into 2020. I was in like a abusive relationship. So that kind of like triggered everything. Like it kind of all stemmed from there. I think before initially I kind of had some sort of like aspect of like anxiety, but I think that really like triggered everything for me.
I would say that I recognised that I had mental health, or actually identified that I had mental health in 2015. But then as I have gone on my journey, I've realised I probably had mental health since I was like 5-ish, because of circumstances. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely can relate to that because I definitely don't identify when I felt it, but you look back at memories and you're like, actually, I was experiencing it then, I was experiencing that anxiety. But yeah, no, I don't notice until I was like 13 and obviously 23 now. When do you guys first think that obviously you guys may have been experiencing mental health?
I think one of the first moments that I can remember, I recall I had tried to asphyxiate myself when I was probably about 7, and I'd done it in a classroom. And I don't think I even like consciously remembered that I had done that until I started going to therapy, and I was like, oh, this has been present for a long time. But again, because of circumstances, it kind of had drove me to wanting to do that to myself, so.
I feel like I can't really pinpoint when I would have like discovered it. I feel like throughout like my teenage years, I feel like everyone's kind of had like moments where they feel like, oh, do you know what? Like I feel a bit anxious, but you don't really like think about it back then. You just think, oh, do you know what? I'm a bit nervous. Like I'm a bit nervous to do this, I'm a bit nervous to do that. I think as I've gotten older and I've learnt more about it, and then you come across like a certain experience or an event, or you go through like a traumatic experience, you start to learn about it more, and you kind of think about what sorts of things happened maybe in the past that you think, oh, do you know what? I felt like this before, and it's like brought back like a few emotions and feelings, and you're like, wow, do you know what? That actually happened a few years ago, but it's all been brought up now just because of this one thing that's happened.
Yeah, I think something triggers it. So I think you kind of, like, with the work that I do with my therapist and stuff, they think it was a lot to do with childhood. But something when I was 19 kind of triggered it. So they think it was likely that I had it when I was younger, but I just wasn't able to recognize it because I was being so adult, when that plays a big role in how you take things and how you work things with your brain. So yeah.
Again, I think a lot of it was just kind of there in childhood. So I remember one time, I think my parents left me in an aisle. So I was like 6, and I was in an aisle in the shops just waiting for my parents to come back. They were like, we'll be back in like 5 minutes. And I just started panicking. Like, I would just cry within like 2 minutes, and I'd be like, what's going on? Why am I overreacting? And then they'd be back in 5 minutes, but I was like, oh my God, they left me. They're not coming back, or how am I going to get home? So little did I know, obviously, that feeling was actually anxiety, and that had a name.
Oh, boy. At your worst, how did you feel?
Like a ton of bricks falling on me. No, that's how I describe it to other people. You really can't explain it. And like, you can't understand unless you've experienced it. And I feel like at your worst in depression, anxiety, or whatever mental health issue you have, it's different. So in my depression, it literally feels like a ton of bricks is on me. Like, I can't move. I'll be in bed. Like, I stayed in bed for literally like months. And anxiety, obviously panic attacks, that's a different feeling. It's like I'm having, like right now from this situation, like shaking kind of thing. Just because it's just anything that is new can be so like anxious provoking, so yeah.
I feel like it's really hard to explain to someone. I feel like it's like explaining like an experience you've gone through. Like everyone's got different versions of like their emotions and feelings. Like my version of anxiety might be different to someone else's version. So I feel like when you're feeling like a certain type of way, it's kind of hard to say like, do you know what? Like I feel really sad, because someone's going to say, but how? Like, what level of like sad are you feeling? And you can't explain it. So I feel like sometimes it's really difficult to explain to different people, but you kind of feel like you're on like a bit of like a cloud, like, and you're kind of like a bit lost. Like, that's how I feel, because you're not like really in touch. You're like in touch with your emotions, but you're not really all there. So you don't really know how to explain it. I think that's it for me.
And I think the fact that we all have different versions of, for example, like
Yeah.
sad or angry, or then you don't know what is normal or not normal.
Yeah,
Because you
I
could say,
agree.
oh, I feel nervous, and somebody could be like, oh yeah, me too. But
Yeah.
it's not to the same extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at my worst, yeah, I felt like suicidal, and then I was getting like thoughts of like self-harm and things, and that had never happened to me before. So I was just like, this is scary type thing. And yeah, I'd just cry all day, but I would still be productive. And I was revising with like tears in my eyes, like it's just silly. So yeah, that was me at my worst, just crying all the time.
I hear that. For myself, at my worst, I was definitely suicidal, and I was self-harming as well, with all manners of different things and ways. And I would feel like it would start as a physical experience. So I would feel like this throbbing inside my body, and it would like kind of ruminate and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that feeling would kind of like transfer to my thoughts. And the thoughts, when they start to catastrophize, and you start thinking, you know, okay, this particular situation's happened, this person doesn't love me, I'm going to be like this in the same situation for the rest of my life. It's going to, you start to have that, you know, and with that thought and the feeling and all of it, it just becomes like a full body experience where I feel like I can't breathe or I can't move. And before, I used to kind of, I would try and even sit on my hands so I wouldn't do anything to myself. Or I would maybe try and go and do something physical. But when that, like, especially during lockdown, when you couldn't go anywhere, it was a very dark feeling.
That's actually what kind of my experience as well. So I think I was 16, and a lot of that was when I just felt bottom. Like I just didn't want to be, like a part of you doesn't want to be helped, or you don't think that someone can help you, and it's only you who understands it. Same with that disconnection, just not wanting to be there. You don't really remember the experience. It feels like a lifetime ago. And then that whole feelings of suicidal, thinking about methods, self-harm as well. I think it got to the point that I was like, I just don't know if I can control it anymore. I was like, I don't know if I can be okay and stop it, because it just felt like I had to do it, because to some extent you grow up with all these feelings, and that's when the trauma comes up of you're not good enough, like similarly with the catastrophizing.
The thoughts that you're having in those particular moments tend to be the thoughts that have helped you survive over the years. So when you're having them now, well, for myself, when I'm having them now as an adult, of course, they are self-sabotaging. They are things that helped me got through my toughest time. So they're only going to worsen my state, especially when in or feeling that way.
Yeah, it's like when you have coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
and they were helpful at one point, but they're not helpful anymore.
100%.
And then, yeah, therapy can make you realise that.
And I think with that as well, sometimes you don't even know the coping mechanisms that you've put in place.
Yeah.
So a lot of the issues I have now, they say like, you had to respond in this way as a kid,
Yep.
but you don't have to now. And I'm like, I don't even know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to know that I'm doing
You have to come to identify
Yeah.
that
But yeah.
you're doing this thing that you're...
I feel like it's like an out-of-body experience. Like, I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm not actually
you.
in my body.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, is that me? Like, did I do that? Or did that happen to me? Or did I react that certain way? It's really mad. Like, you sometimes look at yourself and you're like, do you know what? Like, this is like, you kind of sit there and you think, this is who I've become because of what I've had to go through. And you're like, when you're like 5 years old or like younger, you don't think that that's going to happen. Like, you sit there and kind of say, that could never be me, but it is you, bro. It is you. It's you, mate.
What is the hardest thing about having a mental health issue?
So I had been in a relationship and it turned abusive. It started off with like emotional, mental abuse, and then people kind of sit there and say it's going to turn physical, and you kind of sit there and defend the situation because you're like, no, like that person wouldn't do that to me, and then it does. And I think I always kind of had anxiety, but you can't be going on like Google and like self-diagnosing. Like, you kind of got to sit there and think, do you know what? Something's going on here and something's not right. And I've always been quite like a confident, outgoing person, and I became the complete opposite. I became like really reserved. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I felt really awkward around people. And there was a problem, but I couldn't talk about it to anyone because I was so like scared of what people were going to think.
What did you think they were going to say or think?
I thought people weren't going to really understand my situation, because even throughout when I was going through it, it's so easy for people to say, block him, just leave, that's it. But I feel like I've had to say this so many times, up until you're in that situation, you're in an abusive relationship, it's not as easy as blocking someone and walking away. Like, I feel like it's easier said than done, but up until you're in that situation, you won't know. And that's what I feel like a lot of people find hard to like understand, because they're like, oh, you can just block them or you can just ignore them. But when you're getting like 250 calls on your phone, you're getting emails, no caller IDs, fake accounts, or anything, it could be anything, you're stuck, you're isolated, and you feel like there's no way out of it. I was then obviously referred to a domestic abuse counsellor because the police were involved. And for me, that was a big thing for me, because I used to think I'm so like big and bad, so I don't need no one, I don't need to talk to anyone. And then I had to speak to a domestic abuse counsellor, and they kind of, you get that label like you're a domestic abuse victim. And that was one of the hardest things for me, because I thought, I'm not so big and bad anymore. Like, I'm a victim of this abuse. And I think when I started speaking to my counsellor, obviously I was then referred to my doctor as well, which meant my doctor had to ask me a few things about what I'd gone through, and they kind of like go through like a risk assessment with you. Having gone through that, I was then put on antidepressants. For me personally, I don't think they worked, because I felt like they made me feel worse. For certain people, they work. For me, I feel like they say like it kind of has to get bad before it gets good, but I feel like for me it was just bad. Like, I couldn't sleep. Like, it was making me feel like really weird, and because of my anxiety, I like zone out. I don't know if you guys get this, like, you know, like when you're talking to someone or someone's talking to you and like you just zone out and you're like, fuck, like, what did you just say? Like, and you have to sit there and think, do you know what, I need to start listening. Like, and then I stopped taking them because I thought, do you know what, I've got such a good support system around me, and everyone can support you, but you have to help yourself. And that's the hardest thing. Like, you have to get yourself out of this space that you're in, and you're like, how am I going to get out of it? Like, I've kind of put myself in it, and now I have to drag myself out of it. And I think that was the hardest thing for me. You go through these experiences, and it's so hard to like explain it to someone else, because realistically, they're not going to get it. Everyone's trauma is different. Everyone's experience is so different. My trauma might be so bad to me, but you might think it's just, I just grazed my knee. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't explain your level of trauma to different people. Well, you can sit there and explain it, and people can try to understand you, but I feel like only you can really understand yourself.
I feel like following on from that as well, like that kind of thing about people saying, oh, just block them and stuff like that, it's with anything to do with mental health, everything's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
It's like, just do this, just go to work, just get up and clean the house, just get in the shower. And it's like, it feels physical, and people sometimes struggle to understand that. And I think it's just so much easier to think that all of these things will help when actually sometimes you just can't.
Yeah.
I think following on from what you've just said, you're dealing with the mind. And if your mind has done something for 22 years or for 27 years or for however long it's been, you're conditioned. You've conditioned yourself, or the environment around you's conditioned you to be like that. The circumstances have conditioned you to be that way. And then when you come into understanding that thing, that in that self and in identifying it is a bit of a culture shock in itself, because it's like, oh my God, who am I? Like, what's going on? And then having to relearn that is one of the hardest things you will ever do in your life. The work that you have to do to get out of your mental health condition will be the hardest thing, will be worse than probably what you've even been through yourself. But I would say that dealing with mental health, especially being a Black woman, I would say would be the people that were around me. So when I was diagnosed with BPD and anxiety and depression and extreme trauma, whatever it's called, the first things that was told me was to pray against it and to rebuke it in Jesus' name. This is a real, like, I'm dealing with something and it's not because of something that I'm seeing or hearing. These are real things I've gone through, real traumatic things that have happened to me that nobody helped me deal with when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever it was. And now I'm here, an adult woman, and I'm saying, hey, I need help. You're saying, pray through it. What is that?
Yeah.
And that was for me, that was one of the hardest things I'm going to, like, I'm not going to mention anybody, but going to certain people and they're telling me, you've got demons in you. So is that not going to make me catastrophize even more? If I was having an episode do you know what I mean? Like, for me personally, that's been one of the hardest things dealing with my mental health, because I feel like I'm a person that kind of keeps myself to myself anyway. If you are in my life, I'm more than happy to share with you and to say this is what I'm going through, this is how I'm feeling. But if you're going to come and hit me with, Jesus is the answer. And I'm not disrespecting that, but I'm saying this is something that I'm really dealing with right now, in the flesh. Not necessarily in spirit, in the flesh.
No, I feel that. I feel that. No, for sure. I come from a Muslim background, so kind of, read the Quran, pray, it will be fine. It was a lot to kind of imagine in your head when you're actually the one experiencing it. You find it very difficult to motivate yourself to even pray, because you're wondering, what do I do? There's no one here to help me but myself. So no, definitely the whole aspect about making it demonized, saying, you're going to be something bad. When I was growing up, it was a lot of, so my mum had mental health difficulties. So it was that stigma. It was that, oh, you don't want to end up like her now, do you? So again, that family part of, I don't want to end up like my mum. So I'm not going to say it out loud to you guys. I'm not going to say anything. I don't want my dad.
Internalize that instead.
Exactly. I'm going to hate myself a little bit more, and then I'll be all right. But yeah, no, I think that was definitely the hardest part, when you've got to actually be aware of other people's traumas as well, because you're so responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
You build that awareness.
Yeah.
I don't know, do you guys feel that?
Yeah.
I think, in terms of the culture thing and how you talk about with family, because the culture that we come from, like Black and brown, there's so much denial themselves, so they project onto you that if I've had to go through this and I never complained or I never did this, then I expect you to do the same and more. And then it's just everybody's brushing things under the carpet, and then they get mad at you if you take things out under the carpet.
We come from a culture that, covers up rape and sexual abuse and domestic violence, and it's like, these things happen to you, grandma and grandpa, mum, dad, X, Y, and Z. Why have we not spoken and discussed it? And now it's happening to me, I should be quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so.
I think in ethnic minorities, I feel like it's always like, what are people going to say?
Yeah.
What's that person going to say? What's Steve next door going to say? It's always a matter of what are people going to say? It's not a matter of, do you know what, this happened to you? Let's fix it, let's get it sorted. It's always about what's uncle going to be saying or auntie going to be saying, or you're going to bring shame, this, that, respect, this, that. But when you get down to the nitty and gritty, you're going to pass on these traumas to your kids.
Yeah.
Like, and it's going to go on for generations and generations. You need to be teaching your kids. I think this is such a big thing. Religion, culture, mental health. You can't be mixing these things because they're real life problems. You got mental health. I'm a true believer in God, but there was times where I lost faith. I thought, where's my God? I'm going through this. God's meant to be there to protect me, to support me. So why have I felt like this for so long? I pray and pray every single day. And my mum's saying, like, it's going to get better. Like, just keep praying. But why is it not getting better?
There's a scripture in the Bible that says faith without action is dead in itself. Yeah. And people always talk about prayer. Prayer is beautiful. It's affirmations to self and to God. I understand that. But if you do not get up and walk, pick up your mat and walk, then you're going to stick in the same situation yourself. And that walking is the work. But no one knows how to do that because most of, I can't speak for you, but for black and brown cultures, it is, we just kind of, and then we show that in our, dysregulation when we have our children, and it's, we're going to do, let me give you something to cry for. And you're performing heinous atrocities on your children when you're beating them and scolding them. It's abuse.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think, like, back, like, when, like, our grandparents or whatever, like, they were younger, they'd get, like, beatings and that would be it. That's it. You're going to get a slap and that's it. You crack on. I think now, because it's become a bigger thing, you know right from wrong. Obviously, you're going to hit a kid as wrong.
This is it. When you come down to it, if you're around a child, to me, I'm around children all the time. How can I beat a child?
Yeah.
Because, if the lesson you need to teach them, that they can't understand it in words,
Yeah.
why would they understand it?
Why must I beat? And I'm going to beat you again and again and again and again
It's
until you
not
understand
discipline.
it.
I don't
And
think
how
it's
they're going to love
discipline.
you after
That means I can't communicate with you.
Yeah. I think that's a major problem. I feel like people think, like, beating kids or, like, battering your kid is discipline. That's not discipline to me. You sit there and you talk to a child and you say to your kid, you speak to a kid like you speak to an adult. Do you think that was the right decision? They understand it more. Do you know what I mean? You're going to go sit on the naughty step. We're going to have a bit of a chat. You're not going to get one backhand slap and that's it. We're going to crack on. It don't work like that. They're going to grow up and think it's okay to start hitting other kids, bullying other kids. Then they're going to take those behaviours into school and then you're going to get Miss Smith
Or
calling
even to
you from school.
internalize it, I think that, I don't want to go off topic with the whole hitting thing, but when you, for instance, I will say, your parents show you how you should be treated.
Yeah.
I grew up in the house with domestic violence. I had a SWAT team come into the house. They were trying to stab each other up, all kinds of things. And when I've now got into my relationships as an adult or like my teens, when man's grabbing me up and doing whatever he's doing to me, I'm like, because that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So I've seen my mum take a certain thing, and even when she's telling me, leave, because you set such a great example, didn't you? So I'm like, this is, you're allowing children to internalize this kind of behaviour and say, this is okay for someone to treat me like this.
Yeah.
And it's okay for, and with that, you have an energy about you. Predators can pick that up
Anywhere.
And you internalise your emotions as well.
Yeah.
That's what they always tell me in therapy again. I'm so therapied right now. But they tell you, so obviously in childhood, if you're taught not to have negative emotions need to happen. That's positive. If you're taught to never say how you feel because you're in an abusive environment and things like that, you internalise everything emotionally, and now you don't know how to manage these negative emotions, and you come out in this mental health issue. And I just wanted to touch on as well what you said about episodes. I think people don't really see that side of mental illness. With a lot of mental illness, you go in and out of episodes where you go to rock bottom to being okay to rock bottom. And I think that's one of the things I find hard as well, because it's like start life, stop life, start life, stop life. So I think that's another difficulty, the starting and stopping, the internalising negative feelings, all those things contribute to how we feel.
I think it's like the stigma, like this. There's such a big stigma, like especially in like our like cultures and stuff, like, and probably in like white culture as well. I feel like there's still a stigma in all different types of cultures, but you sit there and you think like, okay, like if my own aren't going to help me, then who am I meant to tell? I can't sit there and go tell mum and dad that I'm feeling like this and upset or this has happened to me, because mum and dad are going to say to me, do you know what? I went through that and I was fine.
Get over it.
Get over it.
That's
yeah.
that was one of my worst things. Get over it. You're a strong black woman.
Yeah.
Get over it. Where?
It's like minor. Don't worry.
It's
like
nothing.
you haven't seen anything left. Like you haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen life yet. Like
I'm
it's
stronger
like,
than this.
With the episodes thing, I see it kind of like that can happen in a day for me. It can be like you literally like I could be crying literally before coming here, like really catastrophizing, and then, hey guys, what's up? Like having one of those, and it's the weirdest thing ever. It's
That
like
comes with BPD. You said
that
BPD,
is, yeah,
right?
it's part of BPD, and most people that have BPD are like high functioning with anxiety, so they're lawyers or they're really successful in their careers. I hear that. I hear that, but it's like in itself that creates like a neurosis as well, because I'm like, that makes me feel weird about myself.
Yeah, you don't know
If that makes
sense
sense.
of self.
because you kind of don't know how you're actually feeling. Like, because you're feeling so many things in like a matter of time. You're like, do I feel happy? Do I feel sad? Like, what am I feeling at that moment in time? And then you don't know how I feel like sometimes I don't know how to act. I'm like, am I happy right now? Am I sad right now? Should I be crying right now? Like, it's so
You don't have to
weird.
regulate and
yeah.
check in with yourself,
There's
yeah.
like, it's too much going on in your body and your mind.
I think the other day in my session, like last week or 2 weeks ago, I was like to my therapist, I was like, I'm doing all the work. I'm doing all the work. Tell me what I've achieved. And she was like, you're doing really well. And she said, you're really aware of your thoughts. And it goes back to that kind of like CBT of like, oh, you're aware of your thoughts, emotions, behaviors. And then she was like, you really need to be more aware of your emotions. You need to be more aware of what your insides are doing, going back to that emotional regulation of what's happening inside and how you're regulating. Only then can you start actually going through that other bit of process. Yeah.
I think we just get taught to like cope. You don't get taught to deal with things. And then you kind of go through life just coping, and then something else happens and you have to cope with that. And you brush it under the carpet, and then another thing happens, and then you're just brushing it under. You're not actually dealing with the situation. Like, you're not sat there thinking, do you know what? I'm going to sort this out. This is what's happened. Let's sort the problem and let's move on. I'm going to learn from this. So then you can kind of like not let it happen
I
again.
understand what you're saying. It's a different topic for me though, but that's how I feel about the NHS, because they deal with like risk as opposed to the source. So if you're getting help via the NHS, they tend to do like a risk assessment on you, and then like CBT or DBT or MBT, which I'm doing. They deal with the thoughts and the focuses and the feelings of how you're regulating right now in this situation, as opposed to why are you dysregulated in the first place because of what's happened to you then, or this particular type of therapy that I'm on, which I don't find is helpful. But even when they're dealing with patients in hospital, because I had myself admitted this year, the gentleman had said to me, if you were cutting yourself and hurting yourself right now, I'd be able to admit you into hospital. But because you're not, I can't do anything about it. And I said, well, I feel unsafe, I feel X, Y, and Z. Well, we can't do anything about it. And I had to plead for like 6 hours. So it's like, it's difficult. It's very, very...
I feel like unless people are seeing it right in front of them, they're not going to do anything about it.
That's when it's more preventative. That's when it's more, okay, I'm actually seeing that you're about to do this.
To me, that's not helpful.
No, I mean, it's not,
of course, but I'm just like...
No, I've... because I'm an assistant psychologist, so I deal with that on a daily, and not for NHS. But no, I'm definitely thinking to myself, CBT is so overrated. Psychotherapy, that's the one I'd go down instead when it focuses on the past and all that.
Of course.
Yeah, so luckily for me, when I went through my GP when I was very depressed, so I was put on antidepressants, and then I also got to do CBT. And now with antidepressants, of course, some people have some people find it helpful, and some people don't. The way that one doctor told me about it is that antidepressants can sometimes be like if you've hurt your knee and you have to go to physiotherapy, the physiotherapy is painful, so you sometimes have to take paracetamol first so that you can then engage in the therapy. So for me, I took antidepressants so that I could get to a state of functioning and normalcy so that I could then engage in therapy. So first year, I didn't find CBT that helpful. I was like, yeah, my problems are a bit deeper than what this online thing is telling me. So then I said that to my GP, and then they forwarded me to another type of like psychotherapy. And that was like 10 sessions, and I found that really helpful. So I think that's one thing that people should know, that if you aren't happy with, or if you don't feel like it has been solved, then like it's a two-way conversation with your doctor. So you can say that I didn't find that helpful, I do find this helpful. It's like you and your doctor should be working together for a solution. Yeah. So thankfully I was able to try another type of therapy.
You've had a good experience then.
No, I have had a good experience, but I understand that that's not the experience of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then it just makes it more frustrating. And then if one person doesn't have a good experience, then they'll say it can make people not want to engage with it in the first place. Or you might be brave enough to go to a doctor and then you're dismissed. And that can be really painful.
Yeah, they'll focus on the heroin now and then be like, oh no, you're okay for now. But when you're not actually depressed right now, you're not actually crying. Like, do you want me to cry?
Yeah, exactly.
I can cry if you want me to.
And it's a firefighting survival mode rather than a thriving, healthy mode.
Did you struggle to tell someone you had mental health issues? Yes.
Yes.
100%. I think it's because for me, like, I've got a really strong personality. So where I said, like, thought I was so big and bad, 5 foot, thinking I'm big and bad, it was so hard for me to accept it and say to someone, I think there's something wrong. Because you want to sit there and think, do you know what, I'm strong enough to deal with this. I can deal with it. I've been through shit. And I've dealt with that before, and I can get through this as well. You kind of sit there and there's that fear of getting judged because there's such a stigma. I feel like on social media where I've seen like you talk about something and there's always a critic. There's always someone. There's going to be someone that says, do you know what, I feel you, but there's always that but. Like, there shouldn't be that but. Why are you saying but to me? Like, you should be able to sit there and say, do you know what, you've just spoken about this. Like,
I hear you.
Like, that's how you feel. There's no ifs or buts. That's how I feel. Like, you shouldn't be questioning how I'm feeling. You don't know what I've gone through.
People like to gaslight your emotions.
Gaslighting is such a big thing. It's become such a thing. And you sit there and you think, like, obviously, because I've now come across different types of people, I've kind of picked up on like certain behaviours. And I know when someone's gaslighting me, so there and then I'll shut it down because no way, honey, you ain't gaslighting me, bro. Like, people want to disregard your feelings and make you feel like it's nothing when it is something. And then you sit there and your thoughts thinking, am I being dramatic? No, you're not being dramatic.
You start to gaslight yourself.
Yeah, you start to think, oh, do you know what, I'm being dramatic. Like, it's so minor. It's not minor. You're feeling like that for a certain reason.
Your body's having a physical response, a chemical response
That's
to
the
something
thing.
and saying there's something going on here.
Someone sitting there telling you, like, oh, it's not that deep. It is deep. And people need to start realising that. It could be anything. I could fall over and graze my knee. That might be something big to me. It might not be big to you, but that's my hurt. That's my upset. That's why I feel like it was really hard.
And that comes down to you as well, the people that you have around as well.
Yeah.
I found it really, really hard, but luckily, like, I have the bestest friends in the world. I was in uni and they noticed something was wrong, that my behaviour was off. And that's been the case every single time. When I went to hospital, all times my friends have been there. So I think it's so important to be able to have people around that know you so well they can see when something's wrong when you can't say yourself.
I agree with you to a certain extent, because I believe that people can only help you as much as their capacity allows them to help you. So if they don't understand this thing that you are dealing with, or this mental health or diagnosis that you're dealing with, they can only help you, as I said before, pray about it, or, get on with it. It's, it's nothing like that. You've been through worse things. All of these things can even potentially tip you. So to answer the question, I didn't have a problem talking about my mental health. like, I want people to know this is what I'm going through. I think it was the aftermath of people not knowing how to deal with me was problematic for me. And because people couldn't deal with me as gently as I needed to be dealt with, I've kind of like removed them from that arena, because I was like, you're just gonna make it worse. And I don't want that to affect the way I see you or our relationship. So therefore I'm just gonna keep you at arm's distance.
It's interesting you say that. I grew up kind of with friends, like family life was quite difficult, so I would always tell my friends everything. And it was such a normal way. It was like telling a story, like this happened, that happened. It was so normal in my childhood, like just telling them every day. It was like a normal story. So it didn't really affect me or kind of make it difficult to say anything like, oh yeah, this happened. Yeah, oh, it happens on a daily basis. Oh yeah.
It became normalized somewhat, yeah.
So when they heard it, they don't kind of know what to say, what to react. And I don't think that friends know how to react sometimes. And that expectation was commonly, like, in my head, I was like, do I need to see someone, or do I just have my friends? And obviously then I started seeing a counsellor at school, when I went to secondary school. So I think definitely I just normalised it so much. I didn't struggle to say it to my social support system, but obviously to my parents, it was like, some people may find it a burden.
That's the next thing I was about to say. I was like, I wouldn't want to burden somebody or give them that responsibility, because I know how hard it is to deal with this myself, and I'm barely dealing with it at all. Well, then at the time. So why would I then give it to somebody else to be like, here you go?
But that's such a big issue that's such a big issue with mental health, not wanting to burden people. And that is something that really needs to change. I've said it before that, like, if anything, just call someone. They would want you to call them. And this whole thing with mental health, I've had it, we've all had it, where it's just like, I don't want someone else to have to see me like this. I don't want them to have to deal with it. But it's so important for us to be able to do that, to be able to be here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely right. A counsellor said to me at the beginning of the year that if you are expecting a different result, you can't do the same thing. So where I'm like, oh no, that person obviously has said to me, oh, reach out to me if you need an assistance. I'm like, no, I'm not going to call them when I'm having an episode. She's like, but how will you know that they're willing to receive you if you don't try? And it kind of, even though it sounds really simple, it was kind of groundbreaking to me, because in my lifetime, I've never experienced that kind of tenderness or that care. So when I've done it, and the first time I did do it, my friend was like, nah, sorry, I can't, I'm not available, which upset me, but I was like, I'm still gonna continue to keep trying, because I'm now doing something different so that I'm not gonna hurt myself, or I'm not gonna do this thing to me because I don't deserve to do that to myself. So it's kind of like reworking the way you think about things, so I completely agree
and
with
in
you.
moderation, like, obviously, people have their own stuff, it's not to say, but if you really need it and you're at that low point, it's so important.
And I think it's just in terms of being able to tell others and not feeling like a burden, it is a thing of self-worth, of that I am allowed to be around people when I'm happy, when I'm sad, and relationships are gonna have times where I have to have them and they have to have me. And, you know, I would do the same for them if I could, and they would do if they could for me.
Beautiful.
Someone's just there for the good times. They got to be there for you in the bad times. And that's with anything, friends, family, anyone. Anyone who's not supporting you, whether they're your blood or not, they're not there for you in your low times. You're not family to me. People go on and about families this, families that, family won't leave you. Where was my family when I was going through that? My friends were there. And that's what I feel like, these ties come into it, and then it gets all mixed up, and then you're left feeling bad about like other things, and then you forget about what you're actually going through because you've got another stress because someone's made you feel like a type of way about another situation. There's just too many things. You've got to allow yourself to let people in, which is probably one of the hardest things when you're going through mental health.
I would say as well, so you know how people talk about love languages? Like, this is the way I'd like to be loved, or I like, you know, this is X, Y, and Z. I would say there needs to be something with the same with mental health. If you have capacity, that is. So if you're able to, like, as I am right now, I'm able to function and communicate and what have you, I'm saying this is the way I need you to help me. So therefore, don't bring up my trauma whenever you feel like it, so that you can get a response or get an emotional reaction out of me, because, well, that's another story for another day, but it's like, these are my boundaries. Please respect these boundaries in order for me to operate, in order for me to function. And if you can't do that, then I have to remove you from the situation for my own safety.
The idea of boundaries is really difficult for people to understand, something like this. Like, especially when you've got mental health difficulties, boundaries is often boundaries is often something that people don't realize that they're even allowed to have. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
say I knew how to have boundaries. I'd blab everything out. I'd be like, oh yeah, here's my life story. What are you gonna do about it?
Same.
But it's like, hold up, like, you know, you think something's not right. Why am I telling you my whole entire life story?
Because you want to be heard, you want to be
That's
seen because
it.
no one's ever seen you. So there's a reason for your behaviour. But information is so important, and people can use your information however they want to. And that's something that I've had to learn in the last couple of years. Because I was the same. I wanted to talk about, but this has happened to me and I've been through this and da-da-da-da-da-da. But what do people do with that information? Are you just listening for the sake of listening? Or are you going to help me to come out of that space? Or what, I can't just share that as energy. So...
Yeah, and that's when you got allowed to actually be like, yeah, I'm allowed that. And I think that's really difficult to accept. But it's definitely worth, yeah.
Is there one specific memory that sticks out the most?
Okay, yeah, there's one memory that sticks out, and I look back and I'm just like, why did I not think this through? And so, like, as a doctor, I know the symptoms of depression, yet I was so not able to see those symptoms in myself. So I remember I was going into the kitchen, and then like this thought came up about like, oh, what I could do with like the knives in the kitchen. And then I was just like, oh, that was a weird thought. And I just went on with my day, and that just, yeah, that sticks out to me as, I don't know why that didn't ring alarm bells. Yeah.
I guess mine is, I don't know, I got like really low into an episode this year, the beginning of the year. And I just remember just getting like just tablets and just being like, I can't do it. And I have OCD in my thinking. So I remember just being like, I'm gonna just, you know, take one. And then I'm like, I'd spoken to my friend and she was coming and I was like, no, it's okay, I'm just gonna take one. And then I'm just gonna take another one, and I did it in like my OCD thinking. And obviously, luckily, it didn't go the way that at that time I intended it to go. But I think that's something that stays with you and that you don't ever wanna get back to that place, and that's why you put in all the work. But the work's the hardest thing that you'll ever do. Like you were saying with the brain, it's like the school of life, like the hardest thing you'll ever do when you have therapy and stuff. So yeah, I guess that's, yeah.
I was at uni when I was going through a lot of like what I'd gone through. And uni, like, people make it out like uni's like this, like, really fun, like, you're going out all the time, you're enjoying it, you're making bare friends. When you're sat in your flat, in your room, alone, that is probably one of the most loneliest places you could ever be. And because I was experiencing what I'd gone through, there was a point where I had thought, do you know what, I can't do it anymore. And I was sat on my floor in a freezing cold room thinking, I'm not worthy of living because someone's made me feel like that. I feel like that is the darkest place I've been in, and I could never go back to that. I could never allow someone to make me feel like that again, because at that moment, you have to be really going through some sort of thing to think that you're not worthy of life. We're all worthy of life. We were all brought here for a purpose. You've got purpose, I've got purpose. And this is my life, this is my experience of life. It's what someone else does to me or what someone else says to me shouldn't define how I'm then gonna go about my life or end my life. And that's one thing that made me realise I can't let someone else determine my life or my being.
It's really difficult to pinpoint one memory.
Yeah.
When there's so many, whether it's when I was 14 and, you know, similarly again, looking at the tablets, taking them, luckily nothing happening, but again, like just panicking a little after, like, oh, did I want to do it? And some part wishing that it just stops. And then whether it was 15, 16, when I was cutting a lot, every single kind of, whether it's picking on my skin, hair, self-harm, everything. And I think it got so bad, I was in class and I was doing it. Like, I just didn't want to be in class. And it was almost impossible to study. And I was in that self-destructive cycle. Like, when you just want to smoke, you don't really want to be there, escape it all. I think that was when, yeah, that's what sticks out.
So like I said, I'd already recognised that I'd probably started to self-harm when I was younger. And I would even do like things whereby I would like kind of rip up any like awards and anything that like, I remember writing music for Mary J. Blige when I was like 9, yeah? So I've wrote all these lyrics and I've got into, I think probably something's happened in the house and I've gone upstairs and I've ripped up everything. I've ripped up all my awards, the lyrics, everything. And now I look back on it, it's like kind of like self-sabotaging and reminding myself that no one cares about you, you're not worthy. And then older, I was 17 when I moved to London, and I'd recalled like at the time looking in the mirror. I was going through some stuff with my mum at the time, and I was like, if I don't leave, I'm gonna kill myself, or she's gonna kill me. So I need to leave. So I moved to London, and I've been here for 10 years now. And since then, I would say it could have been actually before I did the last Make It Common last year, and I had an episode and I had smashed my head into the mirror and I took the things and I started cutting myself with it. And the next day I was probably here. So it's kind of like, it's just, yeah, I've had many moments where I've been in certain situations, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I think it's so important that we do share because I think, like, it's that real. And sometimes it's life or, like, death at the end of the day. And people are losing their life. Mental health is so common. And people, if you can't understand, I think just try your best just to listen.
Or don't say anything at all.
Exactly.
I think people need to be educated, be willing to be educated, and
Yeah.
willing to be open and not just be like, oh, it is, someone's just making it up, they're doing it for attention. I promise you there's a reason for everyone's behaviour. Even if you disagree with something they've done, there's a reason why they've done it. And it's never really personal. It's always kind of like they're releasing from themselves.
There's even a reason why you might disagree with their behaviour or that
Exactly.
their behaviour makes you uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And that's why we should all be emotionally aware.
Yeah.
It's not that you wait until you have a mental health issue to go to therapy.
Yeah.
That's like waiting until you get an illness to start eating healthily and start exercising. So why do we do the same with mental health, where we wait until something bad happens that we then see professionals? I think obviously therapy is a luxury, but if it is in your remit, I think everybody should go to therapy so that they're just aware of,
Yeah.
Just on that, I think that therapy should be available for everyone and more needs to be done. And it's so hard for people to access services. And it's an issue. It's like that mental health is a pandemic and people need help. And I'm lucky enough to have private healthcare insurance, and I would recommend it to anyone. They give you have daycare, you have all the different types of therapy. There's so much more support available. And I don't think, if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have been able to get the support and be in the position that I am in today, where I'm feeling a bit better and doing okay, so, yeah.
Did you say that the healthcare was provided by your work?
Yeah, so it's a family policy. So
Okay.
I used to work there. I don't work there anymore, but because it's a family policy. So
Okay,
if
that's
someone you know in your family or anything has private healthcare, you can probably go on it as well and just pay it and stuff like that, dependent on the policy. So yeah, it's something I would definitely recommend if it's in your reach.
What do you wish people understood about mental health problems?
Nice question.
I think I wish that they would understand that it can happen to anyone. Mental health is a scale. You can have good mental health, you can have bad mental health, you can have wavering mental health. And that's why it's so important to be self-aware and to engage in practices that allow you to increase your mental health to a healthier level.
It's not a choice.
Yeah.
I can't just be better or get up and do exercise or do things to make myself better sometimes. So I think, that would be my thing. It's not a choice because I don't think anyone would willingly put themselves through it.
I feel like mine would be that it's not all sitting in a dark room, crying, being upset, being alone. I could still wake up in the morning, as hard as it is, put my makeup on, go to work, and still be going through it. I've had it so many times where people are like, oh, do you know what? She went out, she went here, she's absolutely fine. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what it took for me to get out of bed this morning, put some makeup on, put on fresh clothes, get out of my pajamas, get out of bed, wash my face, shower, to even go out and socialise with people. That's one big thing. I think that's always been an issue with me. Like, people don't get it. I think there's impression that people get that you're just going to sit in a dark room and be by yourself and cry yourself to sleep every single day. I could be sitting laughing and joking every single day. That doesn't mean I'm all right. It just means I'm coping, innit? I'm getting through life because I can't let my mental health get the better of me. At some point, I have to sit there and think, I'm bigger than my problem and I can rise above it, and I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna feel better, but I'm okay to have my days. I can still get up and look like a bad bee, but when I still cry inside. Do you know what I mean?
It's masking it. It's the
Yeah.
mask that we wear.
And that's interesting that you say that, because like one video that I've done is about how mental health in Black and Asian women specifically, and in terms of some of the way that it can show up in a brown person or in a Black woman could be different to another woman. So for example, if we say you have to be in your bed and doing nothing for days, but what about if that person is like a Black or brown single mother? They don't have that luxury to sit down and be in bed all day, but they still might be depressed. So it's like you're kind of getting penalized for being resilient as well. Yeah, what about when you move in a world where you're not allowed to be fragile and soft? It's going to show up differently for you. So I'm really passionate about that, about psychiatry being culturally sensitive.
I think I would say that, as you said earlier about it being a spectrum, you don't necessarily have to go through overt extreme trauma to have mental health. Just because someone's been through really horrible things, you don't have, just because your mum and dad didn't beat you or they didn't shout at you, doesn't mean you don't have mental health.
Yeah.
You probably still need to talk about some things. There's no one's perfect, and there's always room for improvement. And sometimes the way we might think, I've seen a lot in my life in the sense of people that have been through things will then attribute their new way of living to their personality and say, well, this is who I am now. This is how I am as a person. If they've been through certain things, it's like, that doesn't give you an excuse or a reason to behave in that particular, that's what I mean, to behave in that particular type of way. So go get help. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's okay, it's fine. Like, it's scary, but it's only scary to yourself. The other person that you're going to receive the help from is willing and wanting to help you.
They're not judging you.
They're not judging you at all. Going away from your friends, not necessarily your friends, but your friends and your family, but having a unbiased opinion of the circumstance that can really like help you reflect on your behaviour. Because, you know, sometimes you have friends that are like, yeah, well, you know, you should have done this and, you know, you've got to give it to them. And that's not helpful. It's not conducive. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not conducive, sis. It's not that. So let's take a step back. You need someone to, especially if you've had that your entire life, if you've grown up in environments where it's like, yeah, we're going to scuff that girl on sight, or it's this. That's usually a trauma response to something. Yeah. It's not who you are as a person. So I would say, yeah, there's a spectrum, and go get help.
It's like even Beyonce, okay, she can sing, but even Beyonce has a singing coach. Usain Bolt, he's probably an amazing runner by himself, but he has a running coach. So that's just running and singing, let alone living, going through experiences, living with your mind. You can get a coach that can help you with that and improve on what already may be great or not so great.
Just on the back of that, it's so right that obviously you need someone in your everyday life to just even, you don't know what emotions are sometimes. Some people grow up, they've got no idea what an emotion is, what's sadness, what's depression. So like you were saying about the spectrum, both you were saying, like anxiousness is there, and then nervousness is there, frustration is there. So it's like, where do I put that boulder? And I think that's something that also needs to be known by people, is that a label is not everything. A label is nothing to be scared of. Just because I'm told that I've got anxiety doesn't mean I'm panicking all the time. It, you know, doesn't mean you're going to see me panicking. I am going to be laughing, and I'm going to be smiling, you know. But that's something that definitely I think people are a lot scared of. And it's almost like a definition. It's almost like how you want to be, how you're going to be defined. And it's like, no, you're so much more than that. You're not just that person who's sat in their room. You're not just that person who can't laugh, who can't smile. You're so much more than that.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be moved away from.
I think it's like a case as well. Like, I don't know if like you guys have seen it. My most used social media app is Twitter. And you know, like people think like being depressed and like having anxiety is cute. It's not cute, bro. Like, shit ain't cute. Like, and it becomes like a trend,
I was
like
about
a
to say,
trend.
yeah, it's a trend.
Why is it a trend?
Check up on your friends.
Yeah.
Check, make sure they're okay. But,
But
it
are you
doesn't
checking up on
seem-
your friend? You're not checking up on your friend. You're just tweeting it for clout.
To identify emotions is a skill.
Yeah.
To even to be able to do self-care is a skill, because most of us, and that's black, white, brown, Asian, everybody, we haven't been taught to do that, because it's, well, unless you come from like Eastern culture as such, and where that's something that's holistic and it's a part of your culture. But if you come from the Caribbean, or you're from Africa, or from Africa America, for instance, you haven't been taught that. I would say that a lot of the way that we deal with our people has been passed down through our time as being enslaved, and then that kind of dynamic they're passing on to your children. This is how we treat our children. This is why we talk down about our children, as opposed to saying, my child is amazing, X, Y, and Z. It's not conducive. It's you have to move away from that. You know, be open to wanting to help yourself. Be open to reading a book and recognizing there's more to life, just as opposed to the things that you've been taught already.
Yeah, there's more to life than surviving. There's also thriving.
Amen.
Don't be scared to ask. There's always people there to help. As much as you may feel alone, you might feel like there's no one there for you, there always will be. You shouldn't feel like you have to struggle and deal with things by yourself, because we're not all strong, we're all human. Get your help and deal with it there and then, and you'll come out so much better. You might not recognise it there and then, but a year on, you'll be looking back and you'll think, I don't even know who that person was.
Things need to change. Stuff needs to change. I think that this highlight reel culture that we've got going on with social media and stuff like that needs to change. We need to be honest about how we're feeling. We need to get help. And to be honest, I wanted to prove to my anxiety that I could come here today.
You go, girl. You go.
I came because as a black woman who has suffered depression and who is also a doctor, I thought that I wanted to talk about like how my culture, my profession, and those all like intersect. And I thought that, yeah, we could have a really valuable conversation. And I've like learned from you guys as well for my profession as well.
I came today for myself because I feel like I understand the perception of myself, that people would look at me and be like, what's wrong with her? Like, why is she upset? Like, I've had people come and say to me, like, I think I would have thought that your life was perfect. Like, I couldn't understand. And I'm like, depression or mental health, or as I said, it's a spectrum. It can happen to anybody. No one is exempt from it. And I think the moment you try to put yourself like, well, that could never happen to me, you've removed yourself from the conversation. And I'm talking about children as young as 5, as, you know, as older people are experiencing these things. And the more we talk about it, is hopefully the more we can, you know, create some common ground and actually change the infrastructure. That helps mental health. And I think, and that's, to me, that's really important, like super, super important to change the infrastructure of how we deal with mental health.
On the back of that, being a assistant psychologist and coming here, that actually we're not all perfect. Therapists on the other side are really not perfect. We've all gone through our own shit. And it's absolutely awful, it's traumatizing. But it's something that needs to be done. I think I came here today for my own healing, to be able to say that I've got this, I'm not superhero, I'm not anything like that, but I feel like all of us here today, we've gone through a certain stage to even get here today, to sit down and even talk about this awareness. A couple of years back, this wouldn't exist.
I think we're all here to make a difference. We've all got a platform, and if one little thing that any one of us has said today can go help someone, we've done it.